The explosion tore through the reinforced steel doors like paper. Queen Seraphina's scream cut through the chaos not from fear, but from the primal agony of a body tearing itself apart to bring forth life. Her jade complexion glistened with sweat that caught the emergency lighting in fractured patterns. Another contraction seized her, and through the empathic bond she'd forged 6 months ago, she felt Marcus Kane's steady presence beside her. "Stay with me, Your Majesty." His voice was iron-wrapped in velvet. "That's an order." She would have laughed if her body allowed it. A human giving orders to a queen. The absurdity of it all. Beyond the medical bay's transparent partition muzzle flashes strobed like lightning. Colonel Garrett Hawthorne's gruff commands echoed down corridors slick with blood, Etherian green and human red mixing in pools that told the story of species dying together. 40 insurgents armed with military-grade plasma weapons. 50 defenders who refused to let them through. The genetic purists had chosen their moment well. Dr. Helen Garrison's hands moved with surgical precision, cutting through Seraphina's abdomen. The human doctor's face was masked tight with concentration, but her eyes betrayed her. They kept flicking to the doors, calculating how long before the enemy breach turned into massacre. "Baby's not breathing," she said, each word clipped. Professional, terrified. Marcus didn't hesitate. He disconnected his own arterial line, the improvised transfusion keeping Seraphina conscious through surgery, and moved to the tiny form on the surgical tray. His blood-slicked hands began compressions on a chest no bigger than his palm. Seraphina's vision tunneled. Through the haze of pain and blood loss, she watched the human she'd been forced to bind herself to, now fighting for her son's first breath. The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, she'd hated him for what he represented. Now watching him refuse to let death claim another she loved, she realized she'd been fighting the wrong battle all along. The medical bay doors buckled inward. A newborn's cry pierced the air. Then light. Golden purple radiance erupted from the infant, a wave of pure energy that swept through the room like dawn breaking over a planet trapped in eternal night. Seraphina felt it pass through her warmth, healing impossible hope. Her incisions sealed. Her hemorrhaging stopped. Her strength returned in a rush that left her gasping. The baby's eyes opened gold and brown and violet cycling through colors no Etherian or human had ever possessed. "My God," Marcus whispered. Through the partition, she watched the light reach the defenders. Wounded soldiers straightened. Exhausted guards found new strength. The tide turned in heartbeats. Her son, her miracle, her future. The words appeared in cold white text across the darkness, and Seraphina's voice, older, wearier but unbroken, narrated over them. "They say a queen must be strong, but I was dying, and my daughter was dying faster." The field hospital aboard Orbital Station Omega had transformed overnight from a diplomatic medical facility into something approximating the hell Seraphina imagined humans described in their ancient text. She moved through the chaos with Princess Lyra cradled against her chest, the 8-year-old's blood, that distinctive Etherian green with its copper and cinnamon scent soaking through royal armor, designed to repel plasma fire, but useless against a mother's grief. The surprise attack on the transport convoy had killed 12. It should have killed 13. "Your Majesty," Dr. Theron, her chief geneticist, materialized beside her. His pale complexion had gone ashen. "The medical bay now. We have equipment." "Your equipment can't help her." Seraphina's voice was steady, a queen's voice. It had to be. "The wound is too deep. Energy weapon cauterized the vessels. She's lost 40% of her blood volume. Etherian regeneration requires blood we don't have." Dr. Garrison appeared on her other side, the human surgeon, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp as scalpels. "Her type is rare even among your people. We've checked every viable donor on the station." "Then synthesize it." Seraphina heard the desperation creeping into her own voice and hated herself for it. Queens didn't beg. "Your Majesty, you know our attempts at synthetic Etherian hemoglobin have never—" Lyra's eyes fluttered. Those beautiful aureate irises, the same shade as Seraphina's own, now glazed with approaching death. Her daughter's lips moved, forming words in their native tongue. "Mother, am I dying?" The question cut deeper than any energy weapon. Seraphina had lost her parents to the genetic plague when she was 20. She'd lost her mate to political assassination when Lyra was 3. She'd lost friends, advisors, entire bloodlines to the slow extinction her species faced. But this, watching her daughter's light fade while surrounded by the greatest medical minds of two civilizations, this was a new species of helplessness. No little star. She pressed her lips to Lyra's forehead, a lie wrapped in love. You're going to be fine. They reached the medical bay. Organized chaos. 30 wounded from the attack, human and Etherian, both being triaged by staff who looked one step away from collapse themselves. Garrison cleared the central surgical table with a gesture. Seraphina laid Lara down. The girl looked so small on the polished metal surface, so fragile. The armor of princesshood couldn't protect her now. Dr. Theron activated holographic displays. Vital signs appeared in the air: heart rate, erratic blood pressure, plummeting cellular regeneration at 12% of normal. The numbers told the story Seraphina's heart refused to accept. Minutes. They had minutes. There has to be something. Seraphina's hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against the table's edge, willing the tremors to stop. Some treatment, some protocol. We haven't tried. Your Majesty. Dr. Garrison's voice was gentle. Too gentle. The tone humans used when they'd given up. I'm sorry. Seraphina felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart that had broken so many times. It was more scar tissue than organ. Something deeper. The foundation she'd built her entire reign upon. The certainty that will and duty and strength could overcome anything. She was queen of the Etherian people. She commanded fleets. She'd negotiated treaties that reshaped sectors. She'd stared down warlords and emerged victorious. But she couldn't save her own daughter. Rodriguez over here. Now. Colonel Hawthorne's voice cut through her spiral. The U.S. Space Command officer was gesturing to someone across the medical bay, a human man in a field medic's uniform, his dark hair gray-touched at the temples, his hands stained with blood from the patient he'd just finished stabilizing. Marcus Kane. She'd seen him in diplomatic functions, always on the periphery. Quiet, competent, unremarkable except for the ridiculous nickname his fellow soldiers used: Universal Donor. He approached without hesitation, took one look at Lyra, and understood immediately. Abdominal trauma. His voice was bass, register calm. Energy weapon. She's lost too much blood. Can you help her? Hawthorne asked. I'm a field medic, Colonel, not a xenobiologist. I don't know the first thing about Etherian physiology. But you're O negative. Something passed between the two men, an entire conversation in glances. Kane's jaw tightened. He looked at Lara, really looked at her, seeing past the alien features to the dying child beneath. Then his gaze rose to meet Seraphina's. Those eyes. Human brown, nothing like the sun-bright irises of her people. But in them she saw something she recognized, the absolute refusal to accept the unacceptable. Your Majesty. He inclined his head with surprising grace for a human. I'd like to try something. It'll probably kill your daughter. Definitely violate about 15 medical protocols. Possibly start an interstellar incident. If you're asking my permission to take risks with her life, you don't understand the situation. Seraphina's voice was cold, royal, the armor she wore when vulnerability wasn't allowed. She's dying now. Triai. He nodded once. No wasted words, no false promises. Kane rolled up his sleeve, revealing forearms corded with muscle and crisscrossed with scars. Old wounds, a soldier's history written in flesh. Dr. Garrison grabbed his wrist. Kane, this is insanity. Human and Etherian blood are fundamentally incompatible. Triple helix versus double helix. Different cellular structures, different proteins, different everything. I know. He gently removed her hand, which is why nobody's tried it before. But that girl has minutes and we're out of options. It could trigger catastrophic rejection. Kill her instantly. She's dying anyway, Doctor. His voice was still calm, maddeningly calm. Sometimes the difference between hero and fool is whether the crazy idea works. He grabbed a transfusion kit from a nearby cart. His movements were efficient, practiced. He'd done this hundreds of times before. The needle slid into his vein with barely a wince. Dark red blood began flowing through the clear tubing. Seraphina watched transfixed. Through her telepathic senses, the gift and curse of her bloodline, she could feel something about this human's life force. Something different. an odd resonance like two musical notes that shouldn't harmonize but somehow did. Garrison connected the line to Lyra's IV port. Her hands were steady, but Serafina saw the physician's lips moving in what might have been prayer or curse. "If this kills her," Seraphine said quietly, "I will have you executed. Publicly. Slowly." Kane met her gaze. "If this kills her, Your Majesty, you won't need to. I'll do it myself." The blood began to flow. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The monitors continued their ominous countdown. Lyra's heartbeat remained erratic, her breathing shallow. Serafina felt her daughter's consciousness flickering like a candle in a storm. Then a spike on the cardiac monitor. "Blood pressure rising." Dr. Garrison's voice cracked with disbelief. "Cellular regeneration, it's increasing. 20%, 30. This is impossible." Serafina leaned over her daughter. Lyra's skin, that pale jade that had gone deathly gray, was flushing with color. The abdominal wound, that gaping tear that had refused every regenerative treatment, began to close. Not slowly, not gradually. The edges knitted together with visible speed, tissue reweaving itself like time-lapse footage of healing. 40% regeneration. Dr. Theron's hands shook as he manipulated the holographic displays. 50. Your Majesty, this is beyond our historical baselines. She's regenerating faster than... Lyra's eyes opened. Amber orbs, bright and alert, focused on Serafina's face. Her daughter's lips curved into a smile, weak but genuine. "Mother," she whispered, in perfect, unaccented English. "His blood, it sings." The words hit Serafina like a physical blow. Etherians didn't speak English natively. Even those who learned it carried accents, the linguistic markers of vocal cords shaped by different evolutionary pressures. But Lyra's words were flawless. More impossibilities piling onto impossibilities. "What did you just say, little star?" Serafina stroked her daughter's face, needing to confirm this wasn't hallucination born of grief. "The human's blood." Lyra's voice was stronger now. She looked at Kane with eyes that seemed to see through surface to soul. "It sings in my veins, like red fire meeting green water, making purple light." Kane disconnected his transfusion line, pressed a small bandage to the puncture site. His face revealed nothing, but Serafina saw his hands trembling slightly. A man confronting the inexplicable. Dr. Theron was already scanning Lyra with portable diagnostic equipment. The readings appeared in the air above the surgical table, and Serafina watched the geneticist's expression cycle through shock, confusion, and something approaching religious awe. "Her cellular regeneration rate has increased by 400%. His voice was barely audible. "Neural pathway integration is 30% above normal. Immune response markers are, Your Majesty, these readings exceed our historical baselines." Before the genetic decline began. "What are you saying?" Serafina demanded. "I'm saying Kane's blood didn't just save her. It enhanced her, activated genetic pathways we thought lost forever." The medical bay had gone quiet. Everyone in the room understood they'd just witnessed something that would reshape everything. Alliance protocols, medical paradigms, the careful political balance between species. Serafina should have felt relief. Joy. Her daughter was alive, was thriving, was better than she'd been before. Instead, she felt the cold certainty of a queen who recognized the moment history pivoted. "You." She turned to Kane. "What is your name?" "Marcus Kane, Your Majesty. Field Medic, 3rd Battalion, U.S. Space Command. You've given blood to my daughter. By the ancient laws of my people, Your Majesty, no." Dr. Theron stepped forward, his expression pleading. "The blood covenant hasn't been invoked in 5 generations. It's archaic. It's law." Serafina's voice cut like a blade. She didn't want this. Every fiber of her being rebelled against it. But she was queen, and queens didn't have the luxury of want, only duty. "He gave life-saving blood to one of royal lineage. The compact is automatic." "What compact?" Kane's voice was wary now, soldier's instinct recognizing when he'd stepped into a trap. "The blood covenant." Elder Cassius materialized beside the surgical table, as if summoned, which through telepathic channels he had been. The ancient Etherian skin was pale mint with age, but his amber eyes remained sharp. "An old law, Kane. When one gives life-saving blood to an Etherian of royal bloodline, they enter into obligation." "I don't like where this is going." The only debt of equal value to life-giving blood, Cassius continued, is life-creating seed. You have entered into a breeding compact with the royal house. The silence that followed could have bent space-time. Kane stared. I'm sorry, I must have misheard. It sounded like you just said, you heard correctly. Serafina forced her voice to remain level. Inside her mind was screaming. She'd ruled her people for 15 years. She'd made peace with humanity. She'd navigated political waters that would have drowned lesser leaders. And now she was legally bound to reproduce with a complete stranger because of a law written when her species still believed genetics was magic. The blood covenant binds us both. Binds us to what exactly? His voice had gone dangerously quiet. To creating offspring together, to joining our bloodlines. Serafina met his stare, refusing to look away. Your genetic material has proven compatible with ours. My people are facing extinction. We decline with each generation, weaker, sicker, dying younger. What you did for my daughter. It's the first hope we've had in 100 years. I saved a child's life. He bit off each word. I didn't sign up to be anyone's breeding stock. You think I want this? Serafina's control cracked just slightly. You think I desire to be bound to a stranger, to bear his children, to have my reproductive choices dictated by ancient law? I am queen. I have not made a personal choice in 15 years. Everything is duty. Everything is sacrifice. And now this. Their eyes locked. Two people who wanted nothing from each other, chained together by biology and law and desperation. Colonel Hawthorne chose that moment to arrive flanked by 4 armed soldiers. His weathered face was flushed with anger. Absolutely not. His voice could have stripped pain. Kane is a U.S. Space Command soldier. You can't conscript him into some alien breeding program based on medieval laws. This station operates under joint jurisdiction protocols, Colonel. Elder Cassius's voice remained mild. Your medic chose to intervene using methods outside established medical guidelines. In doing so, he placed himself under Etherian law. That's the biggest load of enough. Ambassador Margaret Blackwood swept into the medical bay like a diplomatic warship clearing for action. The woman was silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and had negotiated the Outer Colonies' peace accord. She'd seen every negotiating tactic in existence. Let's all take a breath before this becomes an incident. Too late, Hawthorne gestured at Kane. They're claiming ownership of my medic. We claim nothing. Serafina straightened to her full height, several inches taller than any human present. We acknowledge an ancient compact. There's a difference. A difference that ends with Kane being forced into reproduction against his will. Blackwood's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Which humanity has a word for your majesty? The accusation hung in the air like nerve gas. Serafina felt it like a slap. She'd been called many things in her years as Queen Ruthless, calculating cold, but never that. The implication that she would force, he saved my daughter. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I would not dishonor that gift by taking what isn't freely given. She turned to Kane, really looked at him for the first time. The scars on his hands, the gray in his hair that spoke of years in service. The way he held himself ready balanced a warrior who'd learned to survive by never being caught unprepared. I'm asking you to consider it, she said. Not as queen to subject, not as ancient law demanding obedience, but as a mother whose child you saved speaking to the man who refused to let her die. Consider what your blood did for my daughter, what it could do for my people. You're asking me to have children with you. He didn't phrase it as a question. I'm asking you to help save a species from extinction. By having sex with you. The crudeness of it should have offended her. Instead, Serafina appreciated the directness. Yes. Kane looked at Lyra still on the surgical table watching with those 2 bright aureate eyes. Then back to Serafina. I need time to think. Time is a luxury my people don't have. She hated herself for saying it, for using her species' desperation as leverage. But it was truth. But I can give you 3 days. After that, the High Council will invoke emergency conscription protocols. You mean they'll force it? Yes. At least she could give him honesty. Ambassador Blackwood stepped between them. Your Majesty, with respect, the coalition cannot allow. The coalition, Serafina interrupted, will do as it sees fit, as will I, as will Cain. She looked at the human who'd become the pivot point of her people's future. 3 days, then we convene a formal hearing before both our governments. You'll have your say, I'll have mine. And we'll see what accommodations can be made. And if I refuse, Serafina met his stare, then my daughter dies slowly as the effects of your blood fade. My people continue their decline toward extinction. And you live with having been the key that could have saved millions but chose not to turn. That's not fair. No. Serafina felt the weight of her crown like physical pressure. It's not, but neither is watching your species die one generation at a time. She turned and walked away, every step measured and royal, before anyone could see the tears threatening to fall. The corridors between medical and royal quarters seemed endless. Serafina walked with her usual measured pace, nodding to guards who snapped to attention, acknowledging concerned courtiers with precisely calibrated gestures. The mask of queenship firmly in place. Inside, she was screaming. She reached her private chambers, the only place on the entire station where she could drop the performance, and sealed the door. The moment the lock engaged, her legs gave out. Serafina caught herself against her desk, knuckles white with the effort of staying upright. The room tilted, her vision grayed at the edges. Not now, not when Lyra needed her strong, not when her people were watching. But her body had other plans. She made it to her chair before collapsing completely. Hands shaking, breath coming in gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Through the telepathic network that connected all royal bloodline Etherians, she felt Dr. Theron's alarm spike. He was already moving toward her location. Stay away, she projected. I'm fine. Your vitals are crashing, Your Majesty. I'm coming. That's an order. Silence, then reluctant compliance. Serafina forced herself to breathe slowly, in through, nose out, through mouth. The meditation technique she'd learned at 12 when the weight of potential queenship had first threatened to crush her. It didn't help. Her door chimed. She considered ignoring it. Then Dr. Theron's voice came through the comm. Your Majesty, if you don't let me in, I'm overriding the lock. Medical Emergency Authority. He'd do it too. The geneticist had been her personal physician since she took the throne 15 years ago. He'd earned the right to ignore royal commands when her health was at stake. Enter. Theron swept in, carrying in his portable medical scanner, his expression schooled to professional neutrality, but his eyes betraying concern. He activated the device without asking permission. Holographic readings appeared in the air between them. His face went ashen. Your regeneration is at 42% of baseline, he said quietly. Down from 45% 2 weeks ago. Your Majesty, I know. She cut him off. She didn't need to hear the diagnosis. She'd been feeling it for months. The exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. The wounds that healed slower than they should. The subtle dimming of her telepathic range. She was dying, just like everyone else. At this rate of degradation, Theron's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. 10 to 15 years, maybe less if the decline accelerates. Then we don't have time to waste, do we? Serafina straightened in her chair, forcing her spine rigid. Cain's blood saved Lyra. It enhanced her beyond what we thought possible. If he agrees to the covenant, it could save you too. Theron pulled up genetic projection models. The hologram showed her cellular regeneration gradually failing over the next decade. Then a second model showing what might happen with Cain's genetic integration. The effects wouldn't be immediate like with Lyra's emergency transfusion, but over time, through pregnancy, through the genetic exchange of creating new life, it could stabilize your decline, perhaps even reverse it. Serafina studied the projections, hope and desperation warring inside her chest. You can't tell him, she said finally. Your Majesty, he needs to make this choice based on saving my daughter and my people, not on some misguided notion of saving me personally. She met Theron's stare. Promise me. The geneticist was quiet for a long moment. This is a mistake. I'm aware, promise me anyway. I promise, he deactivated the scanner. But Serafina, and I'm speaking as your friend now, not your physician, you deserve to be saved too. Not just your people, you. The use of her name rather than title nearly broke her composure. Queens don't get saved, she said softly. We save others. It's the job. After Theron left, Seraphina sat alone in her chambers. Through the observation window, Earth turned below blues and greens and whites swirling in patterns that had nothing to do with the species fighting on its surface in an orbit around it. She thought about Marcus Kane, the scars on his hands, the gray in his hair, the way he'd looked at Lyra and decided to try the impossible because giving up wasn't an option. She thought about her own reflection in the polished surface of her desk, the woman who'd become queen at 20 because plague killed everyone ahead of her in succession, who'd learned to make impossible choices and live with the consequences, who'd forgotten what it meant to want something for herself rather than for her people, who was now legally bound to reproduce with a stranger to save her species, and maybe secretly to save herself. The door chimed again. Enter. Lyra bounded in, literally bounded with the enhanced physical abilities Kane's blood had given her. The 8-year-old's face was bright with excitement, her amber eyes glowing with health. Mother, guess what I can do now? Despite everything, Seraphina smiled. Show me. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating. A moment later, Seraphina felt a telepathic touch, stronger than should be possible for a child, clearer than any connection she'd experienced outside the royal bloodline. I can hear everyone on this level. Lyra's mental voice rang in her mind. Not just words, feelings, tensions. Dr. Garrison is worried about you. Colonel Hawthorne is angry at everyone. Ambassador Blackwood is calculating 17 different diplomatic strategies. And Marcus... What about Marcus? Seraphina asked aloud. He's scared. Not of fighting. He's scared of failing someone again. Someone important who died. Lyra opened her eyes. He's like you, Mother. He carries ghosts. The observation was far too perceptive for an 8-year-old. But then Lyra wasn't just an 8-year-old anymore. Kane's blood had awakened something in her. Enhanced cognition, deeper empathy, abilities that would have taken decades to develop naturally, if her species still had decades. Little star, I need you to do something for me, Seraphina said. Anything. Give Marcus space. Don't use your abilities to influence his decision. This has to be his choice freely made. Do you understand? Lyra's expression turned serious. You want him to say yes. I want him to choose what he truly wants, even if that means saying no. But if he says no, I'll get sick again, and you'll... Lyra trailed off, her young face shadowed by understanding beyond her years. Seraphina pulled her daughter close. Some choices have no good options. We choose the least terrible one and live with it. That's sad. Yes, it is. They sat together in the observation window's light, watching Earth turn below, and Seraphina wondered if Marcus Kane was looking at the same planet, making impossible calculations about the weight of one man's choice against the extinction of an entire species. She hoped desperately that he'd choose them, but she'd respect him if he didn't. That was the difference between a tyrant and a queen. The formal hearing took place in the Grand Conference Chamber, neutral territory, where human and Etherian delegations could meet as equals. Marcus stood before both governments, flanked by Colonel Hawthorne and Ambassador Blackwood. Across the wide floor, Seraphina stood with her High Council. Between them, a no-man's land, a polished floor that might as well have been light years wide. For 3 days, he'd done nothing but think. Run scenarios, calculate odds, consult with medical experts who explained exactly what breeding compact would entail, the procedures, the expectations, the permanent genetic legacy he'd be leaving behind. He'd also spent time with Lyra, playing chess, teaching her Earth card games, watching her demonstrate her new abilities, the synesthetic art, where she could paint sounds, the telepathic range that now extended through entire station levels, the physical grace that made her move like liquid. All because he'd given her blood. He'd met with Dr. Theron, who'd shown him projections of the Etherian genetic decline. Children in medical wards, their jade skin mottled with illness. Regeneration rates displayed in descending graphs. Neural pathway imagery showing synaptic connections failing generation by generation. Without intervention, the Etherians had maybe 5 generations left. Then extinction. And apparently he was the key to stopping it. No pressure. Ambassador Blackwood spoke first, her voice carrying the diplomatic polish of someone who'd negotiated through 3 interstellar wars. The coalition recognizes the Etherian genetic crisis as legitimate and urgent. However, we cannot condone the use of our citizens in compulsory reproductive programs, regardless of the legal precedents cited. Elder Cassius responded, "The blood covenant is not compulsory, it is consequence. Cain chose to intervene outside established protocols. That choice placed him within our legal framework. A framework he couldn't have known existed," Blackwood countered. "Ignorance of law does not negate responsibility." The argument spiraled into the tedious dance of diplomatic language, each side scoring points, neither side yielding ground. Marcus watched Serafina through the debate. She said nothing, her face a perfect mask of royal neutrality. But he remembered her in the medical bay. The desperation when she'd watched Lyra dying. The vulnerability when she'd admitted she hadn't made a personal choice in 15 years. The tears she'd tried to hide when she'd walked away. She didn't want this any more than he did. They were both trapped by circumstances neither had created. Finally, he'd had enough. "Can I speak?" His voice cut through Ambassador Blackwood's mid-sentence rebuttal. Everyone turned to stare. "Cain, we're negotiating on your behalf," Blackwood said carefully. "I know, and I appreciate it. But you're all talking about me like I'm not here, like I'm a resource to be allocated rather than a person with agency." He stepped forward into that no man's land between species. "So let me make this simple. I accept the blood covenant." Silence crashed through the chamber. Colonel Hawthorne recovered first. "Son, you don't have to." "I'm 42 years old, Colonel. Haven't been anyone's son in a long time." Marcus kept his eyes on Serafina. "I accept on the following conditions. First, this is a partnership. Equal voice in all decisions about the children we create. Second, I maintain my citizenship and rank with U.S. Space Command. Third, any children born from this union get to choose their own path when they're old enough, human Etherian or something new. Fourth, Princess Lyra receives ongoing medical care for the rest of her life, whatever that takes." He paused. "And fifth, Queen Serafina gets the same choice I'm making. If she wants to refuse this, she can without political consequence. I won't be bound to someone who's being compelled." Every eye in the room turned to Serafina. She stood frozen, clearly not expecting the reversal. He'd just given her the out she'd given him, the choice she claimed she never got to make. "You would do that," her voice was barely audible. "After seeing our children dying, after understanding what refusal means, I've seen enough people forced into situations they didn't choose. Makes them hollow inside. I won't do that to you." Serafina descended from the Etherian delegation platform, walked across that no man's land until she stood directly before him. This close, he could smell that subtle fragrance that followed her, something like jasmine mixed with ozone. "I accept the blood covenant," she said clearly, "of my own free will, with all conditions named." Elder Cassius's voice rang out. "Then by the ancient laws and the mutual accord of both parties, the compact is sealed. Preparation for the bonding ceremony will begin immediately." Ambassador Blackwood looked like she wanted to protest, but couldn't find legal ground. Colonel Hawthorne just shook his head, somewhere between respect and resignation. Marcus extended his hand. Serafina took it. This time when their skin touched, he felt something, an electric tingle, like static discharge, but warmer. Her aureate eyes widened slightly. She'd felt it too. "What was that?" he asked quietly. "I don't know." She didn't release his hand. "But I suspect we're going to find out." Diplomatic arguments, legal precedents carefully parsed by scholars on both sides. Political posturing from those who saw opportunity in chaos. Through it all, Marcus and Serafina had sat in their respective delegation areas, occasionally meeting eyes across that vast no man's land of polished floor. When it finally ended after both governments grudgingly agreed to honor the blood covenant with all named conditions, Marcus felt something like relief, or possibly exhaustion. Hard to tell the difference. Ambassador Blackwood pulled him aside as the delegations dispersed. "You know what you've done, don't you? Set a precedent for interspecies reproduction, created a diplomatic firestorm, possibly started a new era of human-Etherian relations." Marcus shrugged. "Take your pick." "All of the above." Her expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Difficult, certainly, but right. Ask me again in a year. See if I still agree." She smiled. "Fair enough." But the ceremony itself required preparation. Cultural protocols that couldn't be rushed. medical clearances that went beyond the initial genetic scans, psychological evaluations, both human and Etherian, to ensure neither party was being coerced beyond repair. It took 2 weeks of living in a strange limbo between soldier and what future father diplomatic liaison, genetic savior, 2 weeks of daily blood donations for ongoing research, of learning Etherian language basics from patient tutors who tried not to show amusement at his terrible pronunciation, of chess games with Lyra, who beat him more often than not, now that her enhanced neural pathways gave her processing speed he couldn't match. 2 weeks of seeing Serafina in formal contexts, council meetings, medical reviews, state dinners where they sat at opposite ends of long tables and made polite small talk through translators, despite both speaking English perfectly well. And 2 weeks of feeling that electric tingle every time they touched, even in passing. The Etherian sector of orbital station Omega existed in a state of perpetual twilight. Bioluminescent panels lined the curved corridors, casting everything in shades of blue-green that reminded Marcus of deep ocean trenches. The air tasted different here, richer somehow, with subtle fragrances he couldn't quite identify. Alien vegetation grew from wall-mounted hydroponic systems, their leaves shifting colors as he passed, responding to his body heat or electrical field, or something his human senses couldn't detect. He'd been living in these quarters for 3 days now, moved in after the psychological clearances came through. The apartment was comfortable if austere, designed for visiting dignitaries who needed privacy but not luxury, a bed that automatically adjusted to his body mass, a food synthesizer programmed with both human and Etherian options, windows that could display any view from Earth or Etheria, or simply show the star-studded void beyond the station's hull. Most importantly, it had a door that locked from the inside, space to think without constant observation. He was using that space now, standing at the window showing the Appalachian Mountains, the region where he'd grown up before joining the military. Green hills rolling into blue distance, forests thick enough to get lost in, a world away from the metal corridors and political machinations of orbital station Omega. His comm chimed, Dr. Theron's voice. Kane, we're ready for you in the teaching theater. Right. His first official session as instructor for the Etherian Medical Corps. Marcus grabbed his uniform jacket, a hybrid design someone had created blending U.S. Space Command elements with Etherian styling. It looked strange but felt comfortable. Like him, it was caught between two worlds. The teaching theater held 30 Etherian medics young by their standards, which meant they looked about his age in human years. They watched him with those unsettling amber eyes, expressions carefully neutral, as he set up his demonstration equipment. Morning, he said. The Etherian translator rendered his words into their language simultaneously. My name is Marcus Kane. Before we begin, I want to establish something I'm not here to tell you. Human medicine is better than Etherian medicine. You've got regenerative technology that makes our methods look primitive. He wrapped a tourniquet around a training dummy's limb. But I've spent 20 years keeping soldiers alive in situations where technology failed. When your ship is crippled and spinning through space. When power supplies are down and your medical equipment is slag. When all you have is knowledge, improvisation, and refusal to quit. The students leaned forward. He had their attention now. Tourniquet application seems simple. He demonstrated hands moving with practiced efficiency. 3 inches above the wound, tight enough to stop arterial flow. Mark the time. You've got 2 hours before tissue damage becomes irreversible, even with your enhanced healing. One of the students, a female with complexion the color of spring leaves, raised her hand. Professor Kane, why do humans focus so heavily on buying time rather than immediate repair? Because time is all you can buy on a battlefield. He loosened the tourniquet, demonstrated again. Your regenerative technology is impressive, but it requires stable conditions, power supplies, equipment that doesn't work when you're under fire in a damaged ship losing atmosphere. He gestured at the simple tools laid out on the demonstration table. These techniques worked on Earth 200 years ago in a conflict called the Korean War. They worked in the asteroid belt last year when my ship lost main power and we had 47 wounded. They'll work when everything else fails. Understanding rippled through the room. During that Korean conflict, medics earned a nickname, Doc. Marcus met each pair of eyes. Soldiers trusted them more than officers. You know why, because we kept them alive when they should have died. Not with miracles, with knowledge, preparation, and refusing to accept nothing more can be done. He saw the shift in their expressions. These weren't just students anymore. They were future combat medics who'd carry wounded off battlefields, who'd make impossible choices about who lived and who died. Good. Through the theater's observation window, he caught sight of her. Serafina stood in the shadowed gallery above, watching his lecture. She wore the formal military uniform today, deep green with silver accents that caught the bioluminescent light. Regal, untouchable. But he'd seen her cry over her dying daughter. He'd watched her face when she realized the blood covenant bound them both. The mask was convincing, but he knew what it hid now. Their eyes met across the distance. That electric tingle flared even without physical contact. Her expression flickered surprise, then something warmer. She turned and disappeared into the corridor's twilight glow. Marcus refocused on his students. Let's run through triage scenarios. You're on a damaged ship with 50 casualties and 3 medics. Walk me through your priority assessment. But part of his mind stayed with that moment of connection, with the woman who was technically his betrothed now, though they'd barely spoken outside formal context, with the future they'd build together for better or worse. The High Council chamber existed on a scale designed to humble anyone who entered. Serafina stood before the circular table where 9 elder Etherians sat in judgment of their species' future. The chamber's walls displayed star charts, their empire at its height 1,000 years ago, vast territories marked in glowing green, then overlaid maps showing the contraction, territories ceded or abandoned as their population declined. The visual representation of extinction measured in light years. The human has been with us for 2 weeks. Elder Cassius's voice carried the weight of centuries. You've barely spoken to him outside formal settings. I've been occupied with state business, Serafina replied coolly, as has he with his teaching duties. You're avoiding him. This from Elder Morwen, ancient and sharp-eyed. Why? Because every time they touched electricity, because watching him teach her people made something warm bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with duty, because she was terrified of wanting this for herself rather than for her species. I'm giving him space to adjust, she said instead. Or you're giving yourself space to maintain the fiction that this is purely political. Morwen's gaze could have cut diamond. I have lived 6 generations, child. I recognize emotional avoidance when I see it. Serafina's jaw tightened. With respect, Elder, my personal feelings are irrelevant to... They're everything. Dr. Theron stepped forward from his position along the chamber's perimeter. The geneticist looked like he hadn't slept in days. Your Majesty, I need to show the Council something. He activated holographic displays. Medical scans appeared in the air, but not Lyra's enhanced readings. These were different, familiar. Princess Lyra's genetic awakening is beginning to fade, Theron said quietly. The Council chamber went deathly silent. How long? Serafina forced the words past the tightness in her throat. 6 months, perhaps less. Theron manipulated the display. Genetic markers appeared, vibrant purple DNA structures slowly fading to pale green. Blood transfusions alone cannot create permanent change. The benefits require deeper integration. Reproduction, Elder Cassius said flatly. Yes. Theron pulled up new projections. But here's what we've discovered through Kane's continued blood donations. The genetic compatibility strengthens over time, with proximity, with the mental bond forming between him and Her Majesty. Serafina's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, that electric tingle when they touched. The way she could sense his presence now, even through walls. The dreams she'd been having, memories that weren't hers, showing her a younger Marcus in military training, feeling his grief when his squad died. You're forming an empathic connection, Theron confirmed. Rare even among royal bloodline Etherians with non-related individuals. Unprecedented with an alien species. What does this mean? She asked. It means your body is already accepting him on a fundamental level. The blood transfusions to Lyra were emergency measure, crude, temporary, but if you conceive with Kane, the genetic integration will be permanent, for your children, and possibly for you. The projection shifted, showing Serafina's own declining cellular regeneration. Then a second model overlaid with probability curves that showed potential stabilization through pregnancy. She'd told Theron to keep her condition secret. Of course, he'd found a way to inform the council without directly betraying that confidence. The human cannot know about my condition, she said firmly. He makes this choice based on saving Lyra and our species, not me personally. With respect, Your Majesty, Elder Morwen interjected, you are part of our species. Your life has value beyond your crown. My life is my crown. Seraphina's voice was cold. I accepted that 15 years ago. So did all of you when you placed this burden on me. The council members exchanged glances, uncomfortable but unable to argue. There's one more thing. Theron looked distinctly uncomfortable now. We've confirmed the genetic compatibility extends beyond simple blood transfer. Kane's reproductive viability with Etherian physiology is 97.3%. That's impossible, Seraphina said flatly. Cross-species compatibility doesn't reach those numbers naturally. No, it doesn't. Theron pulled up ancient texts, prophecies written millennia ago. But there's a passage in our oldest records, when red fire meets green water, across the void of stars, purple dawn will break the chains of decline. Seraphina stared at the holographic text. She'd read those prophecies as a child, dismissed them as poetic myth. You're saying Kane is prophesied. I'm saying his compatibility isn't random mutation. It's recognition. On a genetic level, his DNA is remembering something our species forgot. Before Seraphina could respond, alarms shrieked through the chamber. High-pitched, urgent, the specific frequency that meant external threat, not internal emergency. Through the telepathic network connecting all royal bloodline Etherians, she received the security briefing, simultaneously breach in Cargo Base 7. Multiple hostiles, armed insurgents moving toward medical center. Her heart stopped. Lyra, she whispered. Then she was running. Marcus was demonstrating advanced field surgery techniques when the alarms hit. His combat instincts kicked in before conscious thought. Everyone orderly evacuation to designated shelters. Tavar, you're in charge. Move. The Etherian medics flowed toward exits with creditable discipline. Marcus was already running for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time, despite the injury that should have slowed him. The tactical frequency crackled in his ear. Colonel Hawthorne, Kane sitrep, what's your position? Teaching theater level 5, heading 2, he stopped. Where would they target? What was the strategic objective? Medical center. Where the research was happening. Where the evidence of human Etherian compatibility was stored. Where Lyra often spent time with Dr. Theron. They're going after the princess, Marcus said, already changing direction. Lyra's quarters are 3 levels from medical. If they're coordinated, they'll hit both. Negative, we need you at medical center defense. Colonel, with respect, there are 50 armed personnel who can defend the medical center. There's one person on this station who knows Lyra's defensive training protocols and can move through hostile territory without triggering every alarm. That's me. He didn't wait for response. Switch channels. Seraphina status. Her voice came through, not the calm, but inside his head. That empathic connection Theron had mentioned suddenly snapping into sharp focus. I'm heading to Lyra. Royal Guard engaging hostiles on level 4. Marcus, there are at least 40 insurgents. This is coordinated. I know. I'm going after Lyra too. Don't engage until I arrive. You're not equipped. I'm going to the armory first. He hit the emergency stairwell, descended 3 levels in seconds. Trust me. This is what I do. Silence. Then softer. Be careful. The armory was automated, but Seraphina had given him access codes during the preparation period. He pulled a Coalition-issue combat rifle, reliable, familiar, added 2 sidearms, a tactical knife, and a medical kit. Old habits. Always be prepared to fight and to heal. Kane, what's your position? Hawthorne again, heading to Princess Lyra's location. Marcus moved through corridors at tactical speed, fast but controlled weapon-ready corners, cleared before exposure. Negative, we need you at Colonel. That little girl calls me father now. I'm not leaving her in hostile territory. He switched on frequencies before Hawthorne could argue further. The residential level was eerily quiet. Emergency lighting cast everything in red-tinged shadows. No civilians they'd evacuated to shelters, which meant anyone he encountered would be combatant. Movement ahead. 3 figures in tactical gear, faces covered, carrying plasma rifles that could punch through bulkheads. Marcus didn't hesitate. Dropped the first with a 3-round burst center mass. The second turned too slow, took rounds through the shoulder and went down. The third got his weapon up fired. Plasma bolts scorched past Marcus's head, superheating metal that popped and hissed. Marcus returned fire. The insurgent dropped. He moved forward, clearing each body. No identification. Professional gear. The shoulder wound victim was still breathing. Marcus zip-tied hands and feet, applied trauma foam to the injury. Even enemies deserved not to bleed out alone. "Lyra," he called through the comm. "It's Marcus. I'm coming to you. Stay in the safe room." Static. Then her voice small and frightened. "There are bad people outside. I can hear them thinking. They want to hurt my brother." Brother, she knew. Somehow through her enhanced telepathy, she'd sensed Serafina's pregnancy before any formal announcement. How many? 3, maybe 4. Their thoughts are loud, angry. Marcus checked his ammunition. 12 rounds left in the rifle. Both sidearms full. 1 smoke grenade. Against 4 hostiles in unknown positions with a frightened child as the prize. He'd faced worse odds. Not by much, but some. Lyra listened carefully. "When I say Purple Dawn, you're going to unlock that door and run straight to me. Understand? Straight to me, no matter what." "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. Being scared means you're smart. Now stay quiet. Let me work." Marcus moved into the residential corridor. Felt the empathic connection pulse. Serafina was close now, approaching from another direction. "I'm on the north corridor," her mental voice said. 3 hostiles down, 4 more ahead. "Stay there, I'll flush them toward you." "Marcus, trust me." He pulled a smoke grenade, popped it, let thermal bloom fill the corridor. Moved through the cloud using memory of the layout. Came out behind the left side insurgent, dropped him with close-range shots. The second one panicked, fired blind. Plasma bolts went wide, melting expensive wall art. Marcus put him down. 2 down. Where were the others? He moved toward Lyra's door. Reinforced, sealed tight. The safe room design was impressive. It would take dedicated breaching equipment to crack it open. Or inside help. The third insurgent wasn't trying to break in. He was planting charges on the adjacent wall, planning to blow through the residential bulkhead into the safe room itself. Marcus aimed. "Step away from the door." The insurgent turned. Young, maybe 30 in human years. Face uncovered, aureate eyes blazing with fanatical certainty. "You've poisoned our bloodline," the Etherean said. His voice shook not with fear, but with zealot's conviction. "The abomination growing in our queen must die before it spreads." Cold fury settled in Marcus's chest. "That abomination is my son. Last chance. Step away. Our species will not be diluted by inferior genetics." Marcus shot him through the knee. Non-lethal. The insurgent went down screaming. "I said step away!" He moved forward, kicked the detonator out of reach, disarmed the charges. "Lyra, Purple Dawn!" The door unsealed. Lyra burst out, ran straight into his arms. 8 years old, small for her age, even by Etherean standards, trembling, but holding herself together with royal discipline. "You came." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Always will." Marcus holstered his weapon, lifted her easily. She was light. The Etherean skeletal structure was less dense than human. "Hold on tight. We're going to move fast." He ran, carrying the Lyra, following the route he'd memorized to the medical center. Behind them, the wounded insurgents' screams echoed. Ahead, the sounds of heavier fighting grew louder. The empathic bond flared with Serafina's relief. "You have her, I have her. What's the situation?" "Bad." They breached the outer perimeter. Colonel Hawthorne is holding the medical center entrance, but they're bringing up heavy weapons. A pause. Then quieter with vulnerability, she rarely showed Marcus, "I'm in labor." The words hit like explosive decompression. "What's stress-induced? 2 weeks early. Dr. Garrison says we can't stop it now. I'm giving birth in the middle of a siege." Marcus adjusted Lyra in his arms, ran faster. "Hold on, sweetheart. Your brother decided now's a good time to arrive." "Now," Lyra's amber eyes went wide, "but the bad people won't get anywhere near him." He promised it to her, to himself, to Serafina through the bond. "I swear it." The medical center had transformed into a fortress. Colonel Hawthorne had set up defensive perimeters using overturned equipment, portable barriers, anything that could stop plasma fire. 20 soldiers held the corridor approaches, firing in controlled bursts at insurgents trying to push through. The acrid stench of ozone and melted composite materials filled the air. Marcus came through the emergency access with Lyra still in his arms. A young private, couldn't be more than 22, took position to cover their entry. "Kane, sir, Colonel's inside. He said you'd need to..." Explosion. The main entrance buckled inward. Insurgents had brought breaching charges. "Fall back," Hawthorne's voice hoarse from shouting. Second defensive line execute. The soldiers retreated with practiced discipline, setting up new positions deeper in the facility. They were buying time, Marcus realized. Each layer of defense cost the insurgents effort, lives, momentum. But eventually the defenders would run out of space to give. Marcus set Lyra down in the secured medical bay. "Stay with Dr. Garrison. Help her if you can." Serafina was on the surgical table, her face contorted with pain, her military uniform soaked with sweat and amniotic fluid. Dr. Garrison worked with focused intensity, prepping emergency cesarean equipment. "Marcus," Serafina's voice was strained. "The baby. I'm here." He moved to her side, took her hand. The empathic bond flared, their fear and determination mixing into something stronger than either alone. "Both of you are going to be fine." Another explosion closer. The medical bay's doors shuddered. Dr. Garrison's face was grim. "We've got a problem. Human anesthesia doesn't work on Etherian physiology. Different neurochemistry. I need to do the cesarean, but she's going to feel everything." Marcus had seen field surgeries without proper pain management during the asteroid belt conflicts. They were brutal, traumatic, the kind of thing that left psychological scars that never fully healed. "Then we do it without." He looked at Garrison. "But I have an idea. Hook me up for transfusion, direct arterial to your IV. If my blood has the genetic effects we've seen, maybe it'll help with the pain." "That's incredibly dangerous for you." "Do it." He was already rolling up his sleeve. "She needs to stay conscious for the baby. I can handle blood loss." Garrison moved with combat surgeon efficiency. Within minutes, Marcus's radial artery was connected to Serafina's IV line. His blood flowed directly into her system, that impossible compatibility, creating transfusion without rejection. The effect was immediate, but not what he expected. Pain didn't decrease. It redistributed. Through the empathic bond, Marcus felt Serafina's agony as Dr. Garrison made the first incision. Tissue parting, blood vessels severing, the violation of body integrity. He wanted to scream with her. Instead, he breathed through it, using combat discipline to process pain without losing function. Squeeze Serafina's hand tighter. "Focus on me," he told her. "Not the pain. Me. Lyra. The future we're building." Her aureate eyes locked onto his like a drowning person finding lifeline. Outside, the sounds of battle intensified. Plasma fire. Shouted orders. The distinctive crack of coalition rifles mixing with Etherian energy weapons. Garrison worked with impressive speed. "I can see the baby. Extracting now." One more explosion. The medical bay doors buckled. Held. Barely. Hawthorne's voice through the comm. "They're bringing up heavy ordnance. We can't hold much longer." "Almost there." Garrison's hands moved with precision despite the chaos. "Baby's out. Clearing airway. Come on, little one." Silence. Marcus felt Serafina's terror spike through the bond. The baby wasn't breathing. 30 seconds. That's how long a newborn could go without oxygen before brain damage became concern. 60 seconds before it became likelihood. He disconnected his transfusion line, moved to the infant on the surgical tray. The baby was tiny, skin shifting between jade green and tan, covered in birth fluids, but perfectly formed. Not breathing. Marcus began compressions with 2 fingers on a chest smaller than his palm. "Come on! You didn't come this far to quit now." 15 compressions. Stop. Check for response. Nothing. 15 more. Stop. Check. Nothing. The empathic bond transmitted Serafina's heart breaking. His own heart matched it. "Breathe, damn it." Marcus kept working, refusing to accept the unacceptable. "Your mother and I didn't fight this hard so you could give up." The medical bay doors exploded inward. 3 insurgents burst through, weapons-raised faces covered by tactical masks. Behind them, Hawthorne and his remaining soldiers fought to breach the opening, but they were too far back. The lead insurgent aimed at Serafina. "The abomination ends here." Marcus turned, unarmed now, having left his weapons with Lyra's guard detail, standing between the plasma rifle and his family. accepting the bolt that would kill him if it meant buying seconds for others to find cover. The baby cried, not a normal newborn cry, something deeper, more resonant, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the air itself like struck crystal. Golden purple light erupted from the infant. It spread like a shockwave, visible energy expanding in all directions, passing through metal and flesh without harm, but leaving change in its wake. Marcus felt it pass through him, warm and electric and utterly impossible. Every cell in his body seemed to resonate with it. Pain vanished. Exhaustion lifted. The arterial transfusion wound sealed instantly. Serafina gasped. Her surgical incision knitted closed before their eyes, tissue reweaving with speed that made the earlier accelerated healing look slow. Her face transformed from agony to wonder. The light reached Lyra. The girl's eyes widened as her enhanced abilities, which had been slowly fading, suddenly amplified beyond even what Marcus's original transfusion had achieved. It reached Dr. Garrison, who staggered as chronic back pain from 20 years of surgery simply stopped. It reached the soldiers fighting in the corridor. Wounds healed. Exhaustion vanished. They found new strength, pushing back with renewed vigor. It even reached the insurgents. The three who'd breached the medical bay dropped their weapons, staring at their hands as injuries they'd carried for years, the visible marks of genetic decline, disappeared. The lad insurgent pulled off his mask, young Etherean male scars on his face from regeneration failures that now faded to nothing. His complexion went from sickly pale to vibrant jade. What? He looked at the baby in Marcus's arms. What is he? Marcus checked the infant, eyes open, gold and brown and violet cycling through colors, skin shifting between pigmentation and patterns that suggested both species' genetics expressing simultaneously, tiny fingers curling reflexively. Alive, healthy, impossibly powerful. He's our son. Marcus met the insurgent's stare. He's the future, for all of us. The Etherean stared, then slowly, deliberately he knelt, head bowed in a gesture of submission that transcended species. The other two insurgents followed suit. Through the doorway, the sounds of fighting died. An eerie quiet settled over the medical center. Hawthorne appeared in the doorway, weapon ready, face slack with shock. What in the hell just happened? Dr. Garrison ran scans on the baby with shaking hands. His cellular structure, it's not hybrid, it's evolved. Regenerative capabilities 800% above Etherean baseline. Neural pathways forming connections we've never observed in either species. He's not weaker than either parent race. He's perfect. Serafina's voice was soft, wondering. She held out her arms. Marcus carefully placed their son in them. The baby settled against her chest, making small, contented sounds. The empathic bond between them flared. Not just the connection between Marcus and Serafina anymore, but something larger. He felt the baby's nascent consciousness, aware, curious, already forming bonds with both parents simultaneously. And beyond that, he felt Lyra's presence joining the network. The four of them connected in a way that transcended biology. Family, not by law or duty, but by choice and love, and the impossible miracle they'd created together. What's his name? Lyra asked, moving to her mother's side, staring at her brother with awe. Serafina looked at Marcus. The bond transmitted the question wordlessly. Together. Orion, Marcus said. Like the constellation, the hunter who became immortal among the stars. Orion Kane, Serafina smiled, genuine, unguarded, more beautiful than any royal mask. One of two worlds, bridged between species. The baby Orion opened his tri-colored eyes and looked directly at Marcus. Infant vision shouldn't have that kind of focus, but hybrid genetics apparently rewrote those rules. In those eyes, Marcus saw awareness that shouldn't exist yet, and approval. The throne room aboard Orbital Station Omega had seen many historic moments. Today it would witness one more. The insurgent leader knelt before Serafina's throne. His name was Tavin, and he'd lost both children to genetic decline complications 5 years ago. The pain of it had driven him to extremism, to the belief that purity was preferable to extinction. Now he knelt with his scars healed, his chronic regeneration failure reversed, staring at the baby who'd done what Etherean medical technology couldn't. You came to kill my son, Serafina said. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who'd made impossible decisions and lived with them. Give me one reason I shouldn't have you executed. Taven didn't look up. I have none, Your Majesty. I am guilty of attempted murder, insurrection, conspiracy against the crown. I accept the consequences. Do you? She adjusted Orion in her arms. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the political firestorm his existence had created. Or do you still believe hybrid genetics are contamination, that my son is abomination, rather than hope? Taven was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I believed our species should die pure rather than live deluded. I believe strength came from isolation, from protecting what made us unique. And now I feel my regeneration working at capacity I haven't experienced since childhood. I feel strength returning that I thought lost forever. He finally looked up, and I understand that I was wrong. That purity wasn't strength, it was death, wearing a more palatable name. Marcus watched from his position beside the throne. They'd offered him a seat, but he declined. Combat medics stood during emergencies, and this qualified. The empathic bond let him feel Seraphina weighing options. She could execute Taven and the other conspirators legally justified, politically expedient. Send a message that attacks on the royal family brought ultimate consequence. Or she could do something harder. Something that required more courage than ending lives. She could show mercy. Taven of House Kelnar. Seraphina's voice rang through the throne room. You and your co-conspirators are guilty of crimes that carry death penalty under Etherian law. However, my son's first act was to heal rather than harm. Even those who came to kill him received his gift. She paused, letting the weight settle. I will not begin his life with executions. You are hereby sentenced to exile from Etherian space for 10 years. Use that time to reconsider your beliefs. To understand that evolution is not contamination, it's survival. Taven's eyes widened. Your Majesty, I don't deserve... No, you don't. Her voice hardened. But my son is living proof that we're stronger together than separate. I will not undermine his message with revenge. Elder Cassius stepped forward. Your Majesty, with respect, showing mercy to those who attacked your family could be seen as weakness. Then let them see weakness. Seraphina stood still, holding Orion. Her royal robes were stained with blood and birth fluids, her hair disheveled, her face exhausted. She'd never looked more powerful. I'm tired of strength being defined by how much we're willing to destroy. Maybe it's time we measured it by how much we're willing to build. The throne room fell silent. Ambassador Blackwood broke it, stepping forward with diplomatic smile. Your Majesty, the coalition formally recognizes the sentencing. Will facilitate transportation for the exiled to neutral territory. Thank you, Ambassador. Seraphina handed Orion to Marcus, the transfer smooth, practiced already. Now, if you'll all excuse me, I need to feed my son and possibly sleep for the first time in 48 hours. The formal gathering dissolved. People filed out, already talking, already spinning events into narrative that would spread across both species' territories. Marcus walked beside Seraphina Lyra, holding his other hand, forming a strange little family unit that shouldn't exist but did. You know the council will second-guess that mercy decision, Marcus said quietly. Let them. Seraphina's voice was tired but satisfied. I've spent 15 years making the hard choices, the cruel choices. For once, I wanted to choose hope. The bond transmitted her certainty. This was the moment she'd been moving toward since the day he'd saved Lyra. Not the genetic salvation of her species, though that mattered, but the freedom to choose compassion over calculated necessity, to be Seraphina rather than just queen. I'm proud of you, he said. She stopped walking, looked at him with those sun-bright eyes that he'd learned to read despite their alienness. Say that again. I'm proud. She kissed him. Not the brief, fierce kiss from before battle, but something deeper, a promise of the partnership they'd built from obligation and transformed into choice. Lyra made gagging sounds. Gross. Adults are weird. They broke apart laughing. Marcus looked at his family, this impossible collection of beings from different stars who'd become the most important thing in his universe, and felt something he hadn't experienced since before the asteroid belt ambush. Complete. But the battle had left questions. 3 hours after the siege ended, Marcus found himself in a secure briefing room with Seraphina Ambassador Blackwood, Colonel Hawthorne, and Dr. Theron. Orion slept in a portable incubator, medical monitoring disguised as bassinet, while they discussed the implications of what had happened. 47 insurgents in custody, Hawthorne reported, all claiming they were recruited through encrypted channels by someone who promised to preserve Etherian purity. We're still tracking down the network. The attack was too coordinated for amateur zealots, Blackwood observed. They had inside intelligence, shift schedules, patrol routes, security protocols. Marcus had been thinking about this, about the precision of the assault, about how they'd known exactly when Seraphina would be most vulnerable. Someone on the inside helped them, he said. Question is who and why. Dr. Theron cleared his throat. All eyes turned to him. I need to confess something. The geneticist looked distinctly uncomfortable. The compatibility data I presented 6 months ago, the 97.3% match between Cain and Her Majesty, I falsified it. The room went deathly silent. Explain. Seraphina's voice was dangerously quiet. The actual compatibility was 87%. Still unprecedented. Still more than enough for successful reproduction. But not miraculous. Not prophetic. Theron met their stares without flinching. I inflated the numbers to force immediate action. You manipulated us. Marcus's jaw was tight. Yes, and I'd do it again. Theron pulled up the real compatibility data. Because 87% was enough, the council would have debated for months, formed committees, waited for better candidates. We didn't have months. Princess Lyra was dying. Her Majesty was dying. Our entire species was dying. He gestured at the holographic projections. But here's what actually happened once you both committed to the bond. The biological compatibility strengthened. Through proximity, through the empathic connection, through choice. You made the fake data become true. Seraphina processed this, her expression unreadable. Marcus felt her emotions through the bond betrayal, understanding grudging respect for Theron's calculated gamble. If this becomes public, she said finally, it could undermine everything we've built. Then it stays in this room. Blackwood's voice was firm. Some lies told for the right reasons become truth. This is one of them. Hawthorne looked between them. So we're just going to bury this. We're going to acknowledge that Theron took an enormous risk that paid off. Seraphina's gaze fixed on the geneticist. If it had failed, if Cain's actual compatibility had been insufficient, you would have destroyed my daughter's last chance at survival and potentially triggered interstellar incident. I know, Your Majesty. But it didn't fail. And now my son exists. My daughter is thriving. My people have hope. She stood. The falsified data stays buried. But Theron, you ever manipulate me like that again, and exile will be the least of your concerns. Understood, Your Majesty. After the others left, Marcus and Seraphina remained with their sleeping son. He gambled our entire future on a law, Marcus said. He gambled on us choosing each other even without the prophetic numbers. Seraphina watched Orion's chest rise and fall. In a way that's more meaningful. We weren't destined. We decided. Marcus thought about that. About the choice he'd made 3 days after saving Lyra. About Seraphina accepting the blood covenant of her own free will. About the partnership they'd built from obligation. Yeah, he agreed. I guess we did. 6 months later, the conference room overlooked Earth, that blue-green marble that had incubated humanity for millennia before they'd learned to leave it behind. Dr. Theron stood before the assembled High Council and Coalition leadership, his holographic presentation showing data that would reshape everything both species thought they knew about themselves. Marcus sat beside Seraphina Orion on his lap. At 6 months old, the baby was already demonstrating cognitive development that suggested his intelligence would exceed both parent species significantly. He was currently manipulating a holographic display with chubby fingers, not through touch interface, but through direct mental connection to the computer systems. We've completed genetic archaeology on the compatibility markers, Theron explained. The display shifted, showing chromosome sequences. These aren't mutations. They're ancient genes dormant in human populations, but fully expressed in approximately 0.03% of individuals. Meaning what? Hawthorne asked. Meaning humans and Etherians share common ancestry. Theron pulled up a phylogenetic tree, two branches diverging from a single root. Approximately 4 million years ago, a species we're calling the progenitors existed on a world in this sector. They possessed the triple helix DNA structure, advanced regeneration, limited telepathy, all characteristics we consider uniquely Etherian. Elder Cassius leaned forward. We have no record of such a species. Because they're extinct. Their homeworld was destroyed, we are still determining whether naturally or artificially. Theron's displays showed ship trajectories, but before the end, they seeded colony vessels across this sector. One reached the planet we now call Etheria. The colonists there retained most genetic advantages. Another reached Earth. Marcus felt pieces clicking together. We lost the advantages. Yes, Earth's environment was harsher, higher gravity, more aggressive pathogens, greater temperature variations. Natural selection favored adaptability over specialization. The triple helix simplified to double. Regeneration became basic wound healing. Telepathy vanished entirely. Theron looked around the room, but the genetic memory remained. Dormant, waiting. Waiting for what? Serafina asked. Waiting for reunion. Garrison stepped forward, adding human research to the presentation. We've identified 15 more human Etherian compatible pairs. All carry similar dormant genetic markers. The compatibility isn't random. It's recognition. Your species literally remembering they used to be one. The implications crashed through the room. You're saying the blood covenant wasn't about forcing reproduction. Serafina's voice was quiet. It was about recognizing genetic cousins, about reunification. Yes. Theron pulled up ancient Etherian text. The prophecy of red fire meeting green water to create purple dawn. It wasn't predicting the future. It was remembering the past. Remembering when we were one species before we forgot. Orion chose that moment to demonstrate his developing abilities. He reached toward the holographic display, and the projection shifted not through technology but through something else. Direct mental interface with electronic systems. The images reorganized themselves into a new pattern. A planet, green and blue with purple atmospheric effects. Beautiful, pristine, gone. Is that? Marcus trailed off. The progenitor homeworld, Theron confirmed, as best we can reconstruct from genetic memory. Your son is accessing information encoded in his DNA. Memories passed down through millions of years of evolution. The baby looked at Marcus and Serafina. His tri-colored eyes held awareness no 6-month-old should possess. So what does this mean? Blackwood asked. For our alliance for future human Etherian relations, it means we were never two species trying to coexist, Serafina said slowly. We were one family separated by time and distance and evolution finally finding our way back together. She met Marcus's gaze. The bond transmitted understanding without words. The blood covenant hadn't trapped them. It had freed them from the lie of separation, from the belief that difference meant incompatibility. We should tell people, Marcus said. Both our peoples. They deserve to know. Elder Morwen, ancient weathered who'd watched generations die, spoke for the first time. They'll resist. Humans will say we're trying to claim kinship we haven't earned. Etherians will say we're diluting our heritage by acknowledging human ancestry. Let them resist. Serafina stood still, holding Orion. Change is uncomfortable. Truth even more so. But I will not build my son's future on lies, even comfortable ones. She walked to the viewport. Earth turned below, peaceful from this distance. Draft a joint statement, she told Blackwood, from both governments, explaining the genetic connection, inviting volunteers for the expanded compatibility program. She turned back to the room. We've spent 4 million years apart. Time to come home. The Royal Gardens had become Marcus's favorite place on the station. He sat on the carved stone bench, Lyra beside him, working on a chess problem he had set up while Serafina walked with Orion. The baby was testing his mobility, not quite walking yet, but making determined efforts that suggested it wouldn't be long. 6 months since the siege. 6 months of healing, building, growing. The volunteer program had expanded beyond expectations. 23 confirmed compatible pairs, now with 5 successful pregnancies announced just last week. The first generation of intentional human Etherian children, raised with knowledge of both heritages from birth. Lyra moved her night-clever trap he almost didn't see. "You're getting predictable," she said with 8-year-old smugness. "Am I now?" Marcus studied the board. She was right. The winning move was obvious once he saw it. "When did you get this good, enhanced neural pathways?" She grinned, her amber eyes bright. "Orion's healing wave made me smarter. Don't let it go to your head." Too late. She captured his bishop. Checkmate in 4 moves. Marcus analyzed the position. She was correct again. Well played. Seraphina approached Orion, toddling beside her with that hybrid grace that suggested he'd master walking faster than full human or full Etherean children. The baby saw Marcus and accelerated, arms outstretched. Marcus caught him before he fell. "Easy there, explorer." Orion laughed, a sound that still carried harmonic resonance, suggesting his vocal structure was evolutionary novelty, and patted Marcus's face with baby-soft hands. The empathic bond transmitted Seraphina's contentment. 6 months ago, she'd been a queen trapped by duty, making impossible choices alone. Now she was still queen, would always be queen, but no longer alone. "Ambassador Blackwood sent the acceptance numbers," Seraphina said, settling beside Marcus. 73% of humans approve of the compatibility program. 68% of Ethereans, higher than expected. People want hope. Marcus watched Orion try to climb into Lyra's lap, his daughter adjusting her chess game to accommodate her brother. Turns out genetic cousins are easier to accept than alien strangers. "We still have opposition, purity movements on both sides. Politicians who prefer division to unity." She leaned against him, casual physical affection that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. "But for the first time in my reign, I see a path forward that doesn't end in extinction. Just in a lot of paperwork." She laughed. "So much paperwork. Treaties, compatibility protocols, citizenship guidelines for hybrid children, educational curriculum, integration. Sounds terrible. It's exhausting." She kissed his cheek. "And I've never been happier." Orion made a happy sound, not quite words yet, but clearly responding to his mother's emotional state through their empathic connection. The baby was developing abilities that might eventually exceed even baseline Etherean telepathy. "What are you thinking?" Seraphina asked. Marcus watched his family, 2 daughters from different species, one shared son, who embodied reconciliation, and the woman he had been forced to bind himself to, who'd become the partner he'd choose freely every time. "That I saved a dying kid 6 months ago and accidentally saved 2 civilizations." "Accidentally?" She raised an eyebrow. "Well, I didn't plan it. No one plans the moments that change everything." She took his hand, their fingers interlacing, human and Etherean, different but complementary. "We just choose whether to run from them or embrace them." The bond transmitted her certainty. They'd chosen to embrace, to take an impossible situation and build something better than either species could have achieved alone. Their children would inherit that choice, would grow up knowing that human and Etherean weren't categories but descriptions. That family was built on love and choice, not genetics or law. That purple wasn't contamination, it was the color of dawn. Orion looked up at Marcus with those tri-colored eyes and smiled. In that smile, Marcus saw the future messy, complicated hybrid, beautiful, worth every impossible choice that had led them here. A message appeared on Seraphina's datapad. She glanced at it, smiled. "Tavin contacted me from exile," she said. "He started a reconciliation group, former purists who want to make amends. They're offering to speak publicly about their change of heart to counter the remaining resistance movements. Will you let him?" "I'll consider it. Redemption should be as loud as the original sin." She smiled. "Besides, a repentant enemy is more valuable than a silenced one." Marcus thought about that, about mercy being harder than revenge, about building being more difficult than destroying, about a queen who'd chosen hope over calculated cruelty. "You know," he said, "I think you're going to change the definition of what it means to rule." "Good." Seraphina watched Orion finally succeed in climbing into Lyra's lap, both children laughing. "Maybe it's time we all changed a few definitions." The empathic bond pulsed with shared satisfaction, with the knowledge that they'd taken ancient law and transformed it into modern choice, that they'd looked at extinction and decided to build life instead, that they'd found family in the last place either expected, in each other. In the vastness of space, two species once separated by 4 million years of evolution found each other again. Not as strangers, but as family who'd forgotten they shared the same blood. The blood covenant wasn't a chain, it was a key. And the children born of that covenant would inherit a universe where difference was celebration rather than division. Where the question wasn't human or Etherean, but simply us. Together, finally, home.